Oh, hola muchachos. Coming to you live from the Lowe's parking lot this time. We've just fed our addiction, so we'll be extra yappy during this one, I'm sure. So, now that we've caught up with coffee time, I think on this video I just wanted to there's this idea I think I see on the internet a lot of self-love. Well, if you're feeling a certain type of way about yourself in this life, you just have to love yourself and self-love and treat yourself. And I think it's well-intentioned, but let me explain, I think, for me, why it kind of led me in circles for such a long time. So a lot of these videos that I make, I think, are kind of with the intention of I wish I could just, hop in yay old time machine and go tell the younger version of myself all this stuff at a certain point. So, I mean, so I don't regret much, and I think things happened the way they did for a reason, but, in hindsight, I guess. I think for me, what I like to kind of the fun way of describe it now, that whole idea of self-love, is more so rooted in self-discipline, and I think the fun way I like to describe it as, the appropriate motorcycle in the background, is the rule of cool. So when I was younger, I knew I always wanted to do some type of art. I knew I wanted to there's a lot of I guess more superficial things, I was pretty sure of myself. I knew I wanted to dress cool, so I was all right, cool, let me really get into fashion designers and thrifting clothing and start really working on my style. I knew I wanted to make cool stuff, so I was all right, well, let me get into cool movies and study film and get into all these cool music, right? Music is my main thing. Got into all these artists, listen to different parts of the world, listen to obscure stuff, weird stuff. But it's kind of a lot of this self-confidence stuff that I thought was confident was more so I was just afraid and just had spurts, little moments of courage. But foundationally, it was so weak that it was kind of like this toothpick. It was kind of like if someone had built a house and it was just built on a foundation of toothpicks. So anyone takes a little to the foundation of it, and it would just come crumbling down. So it's kind of funny. It is self-love, but just the idea of self-love alone, I think, just isn't enough. At least for me, it just wasn't enough to get to the nitty-gritty of it. So to me, it was a matter of, okay, well, if you want to love yourself, you got to make sure that you're always being the most 100% authentic version of yourself. So how do I get there, And I don't think I really made, a lot of progress, an enormous amount of progress, till I kind of came to terms with four main things. A lot of the stuff in this life that happens, it's really out of your control. You can't, some stuff it's just shit happens. But there is about 3, maybe 4 things that general ideas that you do have control of. Which is to say, do you have the discipline to be in charge of what you eat, what time you wake up, and whether you exercise or not? So those don't depend on anyone or anything else. Can you get just a firm grip on those 3? Which will lead into the 4th one. I haven't forgotten, number 4. So it was okay, I find myself constantly I'd have moments where I'm not lazy, but I would work real hard, pedal to the metal, and then something would happen, whether it was something small, someone said a certain thing to me, or something serious, crap, this life-changing event happened to me, and so now I'm going to be stuck in this mindset about it, and just stop making progress and stop pursuing my dreams, and stop I would just let it just sidetrack me completely. But I noticed, for example, if we take those 3 things that I mentioned, okay, I'm always being late to things. I always find myself saying that I'm just I never have enough time for XYZ. That's why I procrastinate, because I don't have enough time to just basic nonsense, this is why my car is a little messy, or my room's a little like, okay, this is why like I haven't, you know, put the package at the post office because I don't. And it was like, okay, well, why not just try waking up at an uncomfortable time? Okay. Real simple, right? Like, doesn't depend on anyone else again. No, okay, well, this feels interesting. This is different. You know, now it's kind of like, well, I have to think now, like, it's like, what is this? It's kind of boring to have to like think about what time I want to go to bed. It's kind of boring to think of like a morning routine. It's kind of boring to, you know, really like 5 in the morning. That seems to be an uncomfortable time to wake up at least shoot for. Okay. Take the food intake, for example, where I don't think I was ever eating like super terrible, but it was like I was fat, you know, and it was like when things would go wrong, that was a real easy one to just suddenly like, well, I'm stressed, so now I'm just going to like, you know, demolish an entire Costco pumpkin pie in one sitting because I'm just stressed. Oh, I don't feel so great. Oh man, and you know, like, okay, well, that doesn't really inspire confidence in oneself, and oh well, and then for my own personal journey, I did do it kind of in a drastic way, I think, over the past year, because I was a little bit desperate, you know, to fix things. But okay, it's not that fun to like, you know, keep track of maybe like my macronutrients and all that fun nutritional stuff throughout the day. It's not that fun to have to research like, you know, what's good for your body and what's not. It's not that fun to like have to, you know, eat real boring but nutritious meals while I kind of figure this out and make sure my water intake and da 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 da. But sure enough, you know, I started to notice quite a significant amount of change in that too, and now it's kind of like, man, I can't imagine going back. And then the third thing was the exercise, where there's a certain way, like when you get your blood pumping, when you commit to doing exercise, just kind of like for where you're currently at, you know, if you haven't done a push-up in your life, but starting off with like just doing 5 push-ups a day, which is I think kind of where I started, was roughly like 5 to 10 per day. I don't know, it's something about that just starts to introduce this different thing, you know, like there's a certain change that happens in this, that feeling of the blood pumping, and it became just like almost like a weight off the mind, where it was like, okay, well, like this is also changing a lot of stuff too. Working on those 3 led to the 4th thing, which is kind of like the food example I gave earlier, where it was like, well, what am I using to freaking distract from what I don't want to do? Why am I procrastinating? Well, you don't want to deal with that uncomfortable thing, so you're here watching YouTube videos all day about like about like police body cam footage, like just nonsense, you know, like you're sitting here distracting yourself all day because you don't want to think about that one. Oh, okay, you don't want to deal with that responsibility, so now here you are eating again like an entire croissant 12-pack from Costco. Okay. So getting a firm grip on those 3 things that are in my control, not external, starts to lead me to think about, well, what am I using to distract myself and, you know, keep myself from dealing with boring, uncomfortable nonsense that was really just getting in my way. Like, who can be, you know, their most authentic, cool self if you're, you know, got all these things at the back of your head? And it was a long journey of like, not only do I have to like work on always being my most authentic, 100% best version of myself all the time, but now I also have to kind of like reach back and deal with all the stuff that I haven't been doing and fix all the stuff that has been needing fixing and addressing, and really start to think and find direction in my life. Like what type of adult do I want to be, man? Like what type of person do I want to become? What type of person do I want to be right now, this instant? Falling into that trap of self-love was a little bit like just kind of more of the same, right? Like if you get taught to like, well, where I'm at right now is cool, I love myself, it's cool, but still you find yourself feeling like, you know, not confident in yourself, not proud of yourself, still turning to these distractions and pleasure seekings when things go wrong or aren't like going as intended, is that really self-love? And I just began to think about it, and it was like, well, no, I need that discipline. That rule of cool also applies to like, okay, are you the type of person that also freaking pays their bills on time? To as a man in America, like I'm very privileged to be here, but does anyone look to you as a beacon of leadership? The reason I bring up the man thing is I don't even know if I'm talking like just necessarily like all manly traits, but just does anyone see you as a leader? Do your family, your potential spouse, your friends, like are you a liability, or do they see you in a good way? Oh, okay. Rule of cool also applies to that, the type of person you want to be foundationally. Like, is it to your standards, or is it just causing misery for you? And so having the discipline to really tackle all those things, it's almost like you inflicting like some type of adversity on yourself that helps you deal with the stuff that is unexpected, the stuff that's out of control, the stuff that's going to show up to really challenge you and say like, hey, these are your dreams. Are you sure you want them? Because I'm going to throw all these things at you. And you have to be able to not only deal with that and keep that under control, but still work on yourself, still, be the most authentic, best you that you can at all times. So getting a firm grip on those, and I think that's kind of the most like summarized version I can give of them, helped me like have a real strong foundation to kind of go back to. So now when things, for example, like if I'm facing challenges and I just don't know what decision to make next, it's kind of like, take a deep breath. Out of those three things, figure out maybe what can use some tightening as like a tool to help you deal with this. Maybe do, an extra workout and dedicate it towards like, help me make a decision universe. Like, rather than, it's almost like those three things are tools. Like I was finally given a hammer after years of trying to shadow box nails into the wall. And having those tools, something to foundational as a thing to be able to deal with these things, helps me become actually more confident in myself and actually build what I call real self-love and get a firm grip, like without fear on like, nope, this is the most authentic version of myself that I am, and nothing's going to get in the way of that. Rather than go into this area of just self-victimization, blaming other things, other factors, not only am I taking responsibility and charge for my own decisions past and now, but now it's like now as I can actually really ask myself the tough questions of like, who am I and who do I want to be? And, really start to realize like, okay, this is exactly who I need to be, who I want to be. And this helps me also navigate like, well, okay, this is other people's comments. When should I still just listen to my own conscience and my own self? And when should I just like, what am I, kind of like inputting? There's a saying in the audio world where it's like good input equals good output. And I think it also applies to life. And I think in addition to getting a firm grip on all those foundational things, it's kind of like, okay, well, before, I guess it was more so just pure bad input from myself, from what I was doing, from what I was consuming, and it wasn't real self-love. So that was it. Before it gets too long and I toss another toothpick in my mouth, I think it just was inspired by like a lot of what my friends have been going through, in regards to like thinking about themselves and the type of person they want to be. Because, all we're taught really is to think about the external stuff, the job, the career, the house, the spouse, the mouse, which again, it's all important. It's very important to ask those questions. But I think foundationally, there's a little bit more that goes into self-love than just that. But that was it. Anywho, it's getting warm here and my camera's giving me a temperature warning. So I think we'll just go ahead and wrap it up and, see you guys in the next one. Responsibility glasses on.